Death Battle Season 10 is here. I mean, not really at all, but at least we got something. Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and welcome back to another one of my Death Battle prediction videos. Yes, it has been confirmed that the first episode of Season 10, coming later in May, is going to be Ant-Man from Marvel versus the Atom from DC. I miss when they made action figures actual size. Anyway, this is a fight that a lot of people were expecting was going to happen in this season, not just because we got a recent Ant-Man movie, but also because this episode was supposedly leaked a little while back for this season, and well, here we are. I will say that I am a little skeptical for it just because other Marvel DC equivalent character fights have not always stood out the most to me across the seasons, but I still have to admit that I am quite excited for this episode nonetheless. You know, there's a lot of crazy potential with like action scenes and scenery. There's a lot of interesting information to go over, and most importantly, this is just a fight that I've been waiting for such a long time. I'm honestly still so surprised that they didn't make it earlier. So whether or not you're excited for this one, I hope we can all agree that this episode deserves its time in the sun. And you know, I still like Marvel and DC a lot anyway. You guys already know that. So while I am cautious for it, I am still looking forward to it in my own right. Now, in case anyone didn't know, Death Battle did confirm that they're using Hank Pym and Ray Palmer as Ant-Man and Atom respectively, which is personally what I expected them to do. I knew there were some people thinking that it could be Scott Lang as Ant-Man, and I totally understand why, to be honest, but no, it is indeed Hank Pym, and that is important to note because there are some pretty major distinctions between the Ant-Mans, even in more ways than you might think. But to start with what Ant-Man and Atom have in common, obviously they're both incredibly smart scientists, impressive hand-to-hand fighters, and they have a ton of hero experience at this point. I'd say Hank, intellectually speaking, is the smarter character, and he arguably has more experience just based on all the different aliases he's taken up, but they're still both really impressive in those fields, and I'd say tactics-wise, they're probably about even. And of course, the biggest similarity is that they can both shrink down to ridiculously small sizes, and through that can pull off a ton of ridiculous, almost physics-breaking feats time and time again. They can both shrink to the point where they enter other planes of existence, such as the microverse or the quantum layer. They can rearrange other people's molecular structures in various ways or just shrink them down. They can shrink down to the point where they can evade death somehow. Hank can shrink to transcend concepts, while Ray can shrink to the point where he enters a quantum state, existing everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And they've generally proven that they can use these techniques to affect characters that are realistically way out of their leagues in terms of power, such as Ultron, a dark side emanation, etc. Now that's just a taste of what their feats look like, believe it or not, but I'm hoping some of you guys have noticed a pattern by now. There are a lot of people in this community who like to scan through as many feats as they can find to try to find the best one and use that on its own to determine who wins. And yes, theoretically Death Battle could just pluck a feat out for either of these characters, claim that it's better than anything the other character has done, and call it a day. However, as we've seen through other episodes like Scarlet Witch vs. Zatanna and Black Adam vs. Apocalypse, when you have Marvel and DC characters who have been around for so long and have so many powerful yet similar accomplishments, a lot of that can just tend to cancel each other out, even if one character has more of those accomplishments or has a slightly better one. So, you know, while Death Battle could very well do it differently this time, I'm not fully convinced that just looking at the craziest physics-breaking feat for both of them, I'm not fully sure that that's the biggest deciding factor here. Rather, I think it's more important to look at how their abilities and techniques interact with each other and where their advantages lie, which advantages hold a bigger advantage in the long run. I think taking a step back here is a better way to put this specific fight into perspective. So that begs the question, what are their major differences? Well, for starters, Ant-Man can grow. And before you ask, yes, Atom has grown past his normal height before, but he cannot do so anymore, and I doubt Death Battle is going to incorporate that in his power set. To be fair though, I don't see that as being the biggest issue, considering that realistically Atom could avoid Giant Man by shrinking down the whole time, and he could even mess with his molecules really easy that way if we think about it. But still, it is something only Ant-Man can do, and it still allows him to do some really crazy things, like increase his power immensely and even enter overspace, so that's really impressive. In addition to that, he of course has his telepathic helmet, which lets him communicate with and summon armies of ants and other insects for aerial travel or battle purposes or both. He's outfitted a lot of other technology into his other suits over the years, like when he was going under different aliases, and I kind of assume they'll be including a lot of that just for this fight. So that kind of stuff can include stingers, which are essentially energy blasters, and a device known as Toolbot, which actually houses hundreds of shrunken down tools for him to pull out and use at regular size whenever he wants. And that does include its fair share of weapons. There is a bit more to cover in regards to the Pym Particles specifically and how they work, like, the stuff that Ant-Man uses to actually change his size, but we'll get into that a little bit later and you'll see why. First, let's talk about Adam. As mentioned before, Adam can't grow past his normal height, and he doesn't really have a lot of extra tech or weaponry that can add to his versatility. However, the most versatile way that he can use his powers is definitely through his mass dispersion abilities. Adam is one of the only characters in DC who has full control over every molecule in his body, and in Adam's case, this means that he can alter his mass just as easily and as crazily as he can alter his size, and completely independently from his size. As in, he can increase or decrease his size without changing his mass, or vice versa, and he's done this to be able to easily glide through the air or increase his speed, or even increase his density to that of a star. He can also disperse all of this accumulated mass to essentially any individual part or parts of his body, which allows him to hit with insane amounts of force if he so pleases. He's also shown other neat tricks using his control of molecules, such as creating nuclear energy blasts or diffusing atomic punches, the usual, so he knows how to manipulate his body in a wide variety of useful ways. Now that might sound pretty overpowered in concept, but wouldn't you know it, the Pym Particles are kind of the same level of ridiculous, just in a bit of a different way. While it was initially believed that the Pym Particles could only grant the power of size changing, it was later revealed that this is actually only one axis of its capabilities. It's actually composed of 3 axes. The x-axis, which is size changing, but then you also have the y-axis and the z-axis. I'm from Canada, so I can say Z, which represent durability and strength, respectively. It was also revealed that this is how Vision is able to increase or decrease his density to achieve his diamond and intangibility forms, and how Wonder Man can increase his strength. The problem that I have with all of this, though, is that all of this doesn't really pertain to Hank himself. And some of you guys might be thinking, well, Hank discovered and studied the Pym Particles. Obviously, he knows them best and would know how to use them to their fullest. Well, believe it or not, it wasn't actually Hank that discovered all of this extra axis stuff. It was Scott Lang, which is a little weird on its own. But on top of that, it was revealed that the Scott Lang bloodline, like the Lang family tree, for some reason, is able to tap into more of the Pym Particles' power than anyone else. So, yes, while Hank did discover the Pym Particles, it's highly implied that he can't do everything the Pym Particles allow for. It's kind of the same principle with the other characters. Like, I wouldn't want to grant Vision or Wonder Man size-changing powers without the proper proof, even though some of their powers do stem from Pym Particles. And I also wouldn't say that Adam can do everything that every other character who has full control over their molecular structure can do. I'm just trying to be the most fair. However, I wouldn't be surprised if in this case Death Battle gives Hank the benefit of the doubt, saying that he's a smart guy, he studied the Pym Particles, he would have figured out how to manipulate them in that way eventually, or at very least just wanting to show off the Pym Particles as much as possible because it's Ant-Man, so they might give him the benefit of the doubt and attribute all of those powers to him. And that's where I'm kind of at a crossroads, because if they do incorporate all of those abilities for Ant-Man, like all that multi-axis strength and durability stuff, then I feel like that serves as a really hard counter for Adam's mass dispersion abilities, if not allowing him to surpass it, since they basically serve the same function of increasing stats. And with that in mind, I feel like Ant-Man's superior intelligence, experience, and much more versatile arsenal would play a much bigger factor, especially since Adam doesn't have much that Ant-Man doesn't have himself. But if Death Battle goes the other way and says that there's not enough proof that Hank can manipulate the Pym Particles like that, and it's basically just reserved for Vision and Wonder Man and the Langs to some extent, then I feel like Adam's mass dispersion abilities just provide him with a greater advantage. Yes, Hank would still be smarter and he would still be a lot more versatile, but not a lot of that versatility would be able to actively stop Adam from increasing his strength, durability, density, etc. to far greater levels, allowing him to withstand Ant-Man's technology or destroy an ant army in one punch, even if they're supersized. It just feels like a more consistent and more valuable arsenal on Adam's part. But again, that's only if we go under the assumption that Ant-Man can't do like the exact same thing with the Pym Particles. So like I said earlier, I would imagine that the reasoning for this fight is going to be a lot more straightforward than looking through all of the insane feats that these characters have been pulling off for years and trying to decide on the best one somehow. I also have explained why I don't think only one of them being able to grow past their normal height is the biggest factor either. They're going to have to be on about the same level playing field size-wise in order to make sure any hits land and are impactful. But in terms of everything else that we've looked at, I really feel like I'm going to have to make a conditional prediction for this one, which I really don't like doing because I prefer to go all in, and I've only done it a couple times before, but I really have no way of knowing how Death Battle is going to lean. I'm really stumped, for what they're going to include, what they're going to leave out, and I feel like this is the only way I can give my most honest thoughts on the debate rather than just going 50-50 and picking one for the sake of picking one. I've basically already said it all in more detail than I'm going to go through again, but just to quickly recap, if Death Battle attributes to Hank literally everything that the Pym Particles can do, like manipulating the Y-axis to become more durable like Vision, and manipulating the Z-axis to become stronger like Wonder Man, on top of all of his regular abilities and tech and skills, then yeah, I think Ant-Man's gonna win. It puts him on at least an even playing field with Adam stat-wise through that mechanism, and then, at that point he just has so much that Adam doesn't have. I feel like in the long run it's gonna be too much for Adam. However, if they go the other way and say that Hank can't tap into those other axes because it's really just other characters have shown that they can, and they don't know if they can because, again, because of the Lang's greater connection to the Pym Particles, which again is still really stupid, but whatever. If they go that route, then I think Adam's gonna win. I feel like his mass dispersion and manipulation can alter his stats to much more drastically than it could for Ant-Man that way, and I feel like Ant-Man's normal abilities and tech wouldn't be enough to directly counter that mass dispersion. Now, again, I'm not trying to say that one of these scenarios is more likely than the other. I'm just saying that I really have no idea what Death Battle is going to say, so I wanted to present both of these stances equally. Maybe a bit of a more awkward way to predict this fight, and I apologize for that. And of course, I could still get it wrong based on what they decide to include and, how they judge everything, but that is what I'm predicting for this episode. Agree or disagree, if you will. But anyway, guys, those are all of my thoughts right now. I really hope you enjoy this video. If you did, be sure to give it a like, comment your comments down below, let me know who you think is going to win and why you think that character is going to win. Are you excited for this episode? All that. Let me know down in the comments below, and subscribe if you could too. That would be so great. That would really help the channel out. But no matter what you guys do, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. We're gonna have to wait a little while longer for this episode to actually come out, but you know what? That's all right. I'm sure it'll be great when it gets here. Hopefully, at least. That's it for me. I will see all of you guys in the next video. Peace out.